Hello everybody, welcome back to Screen Stars. I'm here today to bring you my review for one of my favourite vampire films, 30 Days of Night. The film was released in 2007 and it was directed by David Slade and it stars Josh Hartnett, Melissa George, Danny Huston, Ben Foster, Mark Boone Jr. and Mark Randell. Now, this film focuses on a town called Barrow deep in Alaska. And for 1 month of the year, this town is plunged into 30 days of darkness. This is an actual town, it actually exists, and this is an actual thing. So, as you can imagine, this is a prime spot for vampires to have an all-you-can-eat buffet for 30 days, basically. And that's what happens. There is a group of vampires turn up. They are preceded by Ben Foster's character, who's simply called the Stranger, who kills the local dogs, burns all the satellite phones, sabotages the mobile towers and the helicopters, things like that, to really isolate the people of Barrow. And then the pack of vampires then strike, and then they've got to try and survive for 30 days. Josh Hartnett, who plays the local sheriff, he has to try and band together a group of survivors and stay smart and stay alive for 30 days. However, the vampires continue to escalate their plans in order to flush out any survivors and continue their feast. Right, so for those of you who have never seen 30 Days of Night, why not, I suppose, would be the first question from me. I mean, for me, if you love horror films, and you love vampire horror films as well, especially, what we get here, I think, is a really nicely put together film. I've always enjoyed this. I know they made a fairly weak sequel that I do remember watching some of it, but it was such a cheap sequel. It put me off, and I remember I didn't finish it. Sometimes just the first one is the best, if you like, and when they start going down the cheap sequels on movies, I'm not generally interested. I don't tend to watch them. So I basically was left with a memory of this great first film. Now, the concept here, I think, is what is this film's great strength. And as I mentioned, this place is a real place, Barrow. Even though the way they designed it in the film isn't how it looks in reality. You know, obviously they built props and sets and all this kind of stuff to make it exactly how they wanted, but it really does exist, this place. And my understanding is that there is 30 days of darkness every once a month, once a year, if you like, which is fascinating, really. And it's prime for a horror film, that the whole concept here. Now, I've never read the graphic novel, or from which it is based on. I just personally think this film is a really great vampire film. The strength of it is, I mean, I always like action films or horror films, and I always call it the Magnificent Seven syndrome. That's just my phrasing. You know, when you get characters in films and they all get killed off and die off, like, you know, Magnificent Seven, obviously, Predator, Aliens, you know, all these films where you get connections to these characters and they're slowly but surely kind of killed in movies and things like that. So that this film has that, which I really, really like. It's got some characters that you really like as well and can connect with, which is good. They did take the time to flesh out some of the characters here and give them backstories and make you care about them and their relationships. But also these vampires, led by Danny Huston, who at that point, for me anyway, wasn't a named actor. I didn't know much of his work. Obviously, he's gone on to do a lot of things since this film. He's brilliant as the leader of the vampires, and this pack of vampires are so brilliantly designed. They're horrific to look at. They genuinely don't really care about their appearance. They're just drenched in blood throughout the whole period of the film from their feasting, and it's just, in regards to vampire films, they're very effectively done, I think. The action here is edge of the seat stuff for the most part. The build up here is expertly done, you know. When Ben Foster's character turns up, the stranger, and you know, does these things to the town, and there's this slow feeling of dread that something's about to happen, and then you're slowly introduced to this carnage that these vampires are going to introduce to this place. It's really a great setup at the beginning, and the delivery then in regards to the action that comes following that is brilliantly done too. It's believable, you know. These vampires aren't superhuman in a sense of, you know, they don't die in the traditional way, you know, stakes through the heart, you know, crosses, all that kind of stuff. If you take them out brutally enough, they'll go down, you know, shotguns to the heads, shooting heads off, you know, chainsaws, being run over by massive JCBs, all this kind of stuff. So they aren't completely invincible, but they're very, very menacing. And it's, for me, it's one of my favourite vampire films that I've ever seen. If I were to do a top 10 list of my favourite vampire films, this would feature in that list. How high, I'm not really sure until I maybe get around to doing that kind of list, but I suspect it would probably be in the top 5, certainly this one. So yeah, that is my review for 30 Days of Night. Definitely a brilliantly made vampire film. I don't think it gets as much respect that it deserves, this film. I don't think it did particularly well at the box office, which was a real shame, I think. But it really impressed me and continues to impress me. I've just rewatched it again a couple of nights ago, and it's just as effective now. So that is my review for 30 Days of Night. I hope you liked it. Thank you very much for watching. I will be back with more content and reviews on Screen Stars very, very soon.